somewhere inside the stillness of a zoo enclosure. Beneath the whispering rustle of bamboo leaves and the quiet anticipation of humans holding their breath, a miracle was unfolding. One that would not only test the fragile survival of a species, but also awaken in us the reminder that life itself is a sacred promise. Cameras were rolling when a giant panda, soft, round, beloved across the world, prepared to bring a new soul into existence. And yet, this wasn't just about the birth of a baby. This was about the birth of hope, the birth of survival, the birth of a story that could touch the deepest corners of every human heart. Giant pandas, with their chubby faces, comical clumsiness, and serene black and white beauty, have long been symbols of innocence in the wild. And still, they carry a haunting truth. Despite the millions of people who adore them, they have teetered for decades on the edge of disappearance. Deforestation, hunting, and the endless encroachment of human greed had slashed their numbers to a perilous low. Barely 2,000 remained in the entire world. 2,000 lives, standing between survival and extinction. And so, every single birth became a prayer answered. A beacon of light in a world growing dim. The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. These words echo like thunder against the silence of the forest, a reminder that the choices of humanity ripple into the survival of creatures we claim to love. This was why, in the year 2013, all eyes turned to Zoo Atlanta. Because there, in a world gripped by fear of losing pandas forever, one mother's womb carried the weight of a species. And as she labored, unaware of the hearts pounding around her, humanity stood at the edge of a miracle. In that moment, it wasn't a zoo anymore. It was a temple of hope, a sanctuary of survival, a stage where nature and humanity would meet face to face in the most fragile of ways. And when the panda finally stood, revealing what had been hidden, the crowd fell silent. Something had happened that no one could have predicted. Something that would remind us that miracles are never small when life itself hangs in the balance. Humans were waiting. Prepare yourself for the wild to change your heart. Because the story of this panda was unlike any other. Her name was Lun Lun, though once, long ago, she had been called Hua Hua. She had come from China in 1999, carrying with her a gentleness that melted even the coldest of human hearts. Round cheeks, curious eyes, and a surprising love for the scent of mint and cinnamon. She wasn't just an animal in an enclosure. She was a living bridge between two worlds. The wild forests of her ancestors and the human hands desperate to protect what was slipping away. By 2013, Lun Lun had already proven herself a mother 3 times. She had carried life, nurtured it, and passed on the bloodline of a species whose survival hung by a thread. But now the stakes were higher than ever. No panda cub had been born anywhere in the United States that year. Time was running out. Lun Lun was the final chance. If for everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Her time had come. But pandas are creatures of impossibility. Their biology itself seems to fight against survival. A female panda has barely a single day each year, a mere 24 hours, when she can conceive. If that window is missed, the chance is gone until the next year. Imagine that pressure, that delicate balance of timing, science, and hope. Imagine the caretakers, eyes weary from months of watching, waiting, analyzing every sample of Lun Lun's urine to detect the flicker of hormones that signaled readiness. One mistake, and the dream would collapse into another year of waiting. This wasn't just science. It was a heart-stopping race against nature's cruel clock. When the moment came, they faced 2 choices: trust nature or intervene with technology. But nature had betrayed them before. Pandas, shy, clumsy, and often uninterested in romance, rarely bred successfully on their own. So Zoo Atlanta made the choice to intervene. Artificial insemination. It was not romantic. It was not wild. But it was necessary. They gathered the genetic seed of Yang Yang, a 15-year-old male and father of Lun Lun's earlier cubs. The same father, the same hope. To ensure nothing went wrong, they flew in experts from the Chengdu research base, where both pandas had first taken their baby steps years ago. In the sterile quiet of a lab, with trembling hands and racing hearts, humanity reached out to give nature a second chance. They worked not as zookeepers, but as guardians of a future bigger than themselves. And when the procedure was over, the waiting began again. Would Lun Lun's body betray them with another false pregnancy? Would her hormones trick them into believing in life that did not exist? Or would this time, finally, the cry of a newborn panda pierced the silence? This isn't just a story. It's a miracle in motion. For weeks, doubt clouded every heart. Pandas are known for what scientists call phantom pregnancies, an illusion of life where none exists. Hormones rise, behaviors change, nests are built, and hope soars, only for emptiness to follow. But then, something remarkable happened. A scan revealed the faintest flicker of life. Not two, not three, just one. A single cub. But sometimes, one is enough to change everything. The news spread through Zoo Atlanta like fire. Staff members wept openly. Volunteers clapped their hands over their mouths in disbelief. For the first time that year, a new life was stirring. And with it, a reason to keep fighting. From that moment on, Lun Lun was guarded day and night. Her every move, every bite, every sigh was a matter of survival. She ate less bamboo, another telltale sign. She tore stalks not to eat but to weave a nest, as her wild sisters once did in mountain caves. Caretakers provided bamboo, branches, and straw, not as props in a zoo, but as sacred offerings to instinct itself. For 4 months, her womb carried not just a cub, but the prayers of millions. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. These words echoed in the hearts of those who watched. Because this cub was not just a cub. It was chosen. It was set apart. It was hope made flesh. And then, the day came, in a hush that seemed to still the very air. Lun Lun labored. The zoo workers, silent and wide-eyed, bore witness as the tiny cry of a newborn panda rang out. Pink, fragile, barely larger than a stick of butter. But alive, gloriously alive. And in that moment, a room full of humans realized they were not just watching an animal birth. They were watching a species fight back against extinction. They were watching God's promise of life unfold in the unlikeliest of places. And as the baby pressed into its mother's fur, tiny and trembling, humanity learned again that miracles don't always come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes they come in the form of a cry so small you can barely hear it, but powerful enough to shake the entire world. And so, this is where the story ends. Not in sorrow, but in triumph. Lun Lun, against all odds, had brought forth life. Zoo Atlanta had not just delivered a cub. They had delivered hope for a world desperate for it. That tiny newborn would grow, stumble, play, and remind millions that even in our darkest fears of losing nature forever, life finds a way. This wasn't just an animal rescue. It was an emotional true story. A survival against extinction. A heartwarming animal video come to life. A touching animal story that carried within it the power to unite humanity and the wild. And when the cub's tiny heartbeat echoed against its mother's chest, when Lun Lun curled her body protectively around her baby, something shifted. Not just in the zoo, not just in Atlanta, but in every human heart that saw this story and whispered a silent prayer of thanks. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. Because in the end, this wasn't just about a panda. This was about us. About our ability to choose whether life continues or fades away. And on that day, when the cameras caught the first cries of a newborn panda, the world was reminded that miracles still walk among us, and that sometimes, the smallest of creatures can teach humanity the biggest lesson of all. That love, protection, and faith can save even what seems destined to disappear. The world was holding its breath when Lun Lun, her body heavy with the weight of destiny, began to weave her nest. She tore bamboo stalks into strips, stacking them with instinctive precision. Her dark eyes distant but determined. Every piece of bamboo she laid was not just a preparation for birth. It was an offering to the future, a cradle for survival itself. The caretakers knew it. They watched her with reverence, whispering as though in a sacred place. A month before she was due, Zoo Atlanta set up a panda camera. It wasn't just for staff. It was for the world. Thousands tuned in, their screens glowing in living rooms, classrooms, cafes, Every corner of the globe where people longed to witness the miracle. CNN and NPR prepared breaking coverage, eager to stream what might be the birth of a new chapter in conservation history. Ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you. The verse rang true as humans leaned forward into glowing screens, listening not to words but to the quiet sermon of instinct itself. On July 15, 2013, the stillness shattered. Lun Lun curled into her nest, her breathing heavy, her body contracting with ancient rhythm. The cameras caught every detail. The tremor of her paws, the shifting of her frame, the raw power of labor. And then, at 6:21 p.m., a miracle. A tiny, fragile cub emerged, pink as a rose petal, blind, helpless, and weighing less than a stick of butter. It looked nothing like the panda millions adored. Its tail was too long, its skin bare, its body trembling, and yet it was perfect. Humanity gasped in unison as Lun Lun leaned back against the wall, cradling her newborn with astonishing tenderness. She cleaned it, licked it, held it against her chest, her black and white frame forming a living shield around the fragile heartbeat she had just brought into existence. The caretakers exhaled, tears glistening. They believed it was over. The ultrasound had promised one, and they had one. The cameras captured celebration, relief, and joy. But nature wasn't finished. Humans are waiting. Prepare yourself for the wild to change your heart. As Lun Lun settled with her baby, a hush lingered across the zoo. The staff thought their role was done, but then her body tensed again. Her sides rippled, her breathing quickened. She leaned forward, pushing once more. Silence filled the viewing room. Caretakers stared, transfixed. Is she having another baby? One whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief. The seconds dragged like eternity. The cameras showed her bending forward, her body straining. 2 minutes that felt like an hour passed before. At 6:23 p.m., the unthinkable happened. Another cry pierced the silence. Another pink, helpless cub had entered the world. The room erupted. Caretakers clutched their heads, tears falling, laughter mixing with cries of disbelief. "Oh my God, there's another one," one shouted. Phones buzzed as news shot across the zoo like wildfire. CNN cut its regular programming. NPR switched to live updates. Social media exploded. Viewers typing in shock, spreading the news across platforms with shaking fingers. For the first time since 1987, 26 long years, panda twins had been born in the United States. For with God, nothing shall be impossible. Those words became flesh in that moment. What science hadn't seen, what ultrasounds had missed, nature had hidden as a surprise. A double gift. 2 fragile souls instead of one. The miracle was not just a birth, it was a revelation. This isn't just a story. It's a fight for survival. Because while joy filled the zoo, reality crept in like a shadow. Panda twins rarely both survive in the wild. A mother's body, built to nurture one, often chooses only one. One cub thrives, the other fades away. Death rates among newborn pandas are heartbreakingly high. Nearly half never see beyond their first weeks. And now, against all odds, Lun Lun had 2 to protect. The caretakers knew what could happen. They knew nature's cruelty, but they also knew humanity had a chance to intervene, to tip the balance toward life. Within moments, the zoo staff moved into action. Not as scientists now, but as guardians of hope. They separated the babies gently. One remained curled in Lun Lun's protective arms, while the other was placed in a warming chamber, its tiny chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. This was not abandonment. This was strategy. It was called swapping, a method where caretakers alternated the cubs between mother and incubator, ensuring both received her milk, her warmth, her protection, but without exhausting her. It was a dance of devotion. Humans and panda, working together for life, defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. The verse came alive as workers cradled the second cub, their hands trembling with both fear and faith. All across the country, thousands of viewers leaned closer to their screens. They were not just watching an animal miracle. They were part of it. They were witnesses to a heartwarming animal video unlike any before. A touching animal story where survival itself was being rewritten. Zoo Atlanta had seen births before, but never like this. These were not just cubs, they were symbols. The fourth and fifth pandas ever born at Zoo Atlanta. The first twins in decades, and perhaps the reminder humanity needed that with enough love, enough devotion, even the frailest life could find a way. The first days after the miracle twin birth became a battlefield of tenderness and vigilance. Caretakers worked tirelessly in rotating shifts, eyes heavy but spirits alive, knowing that every hour mattered. It was not simply a job. It was a sacred trust. If Lun Lun faltered, if one cub grew weaker, survival could slip away like a candle in the wind. The swapping method continued day and night. Hands gentle as they lifted the cubs, hearts pounding as they placed each fragile life back into their mother's embrace. Meanwhile, Yang, the father and older siblings Shilun and Po, remained in the public exhibit, separated as tradition and biology dictated. In the wild, panda fathers never stay. Mothers carry the burden alone. And so, Yang remained in view for visitors, unaware that history was being written in the quiet hidden den nearby. Po herself had once been a national darling, her name announced in a grand celebration alongside actor Jack Black and Kung Fu Panda. But even Po's birth had been complicated, her gender misidentified at first. A reminder that even with all humanity's science, nature kept her secrets. Through it all, Lun thrived. She astonished zookeepers with her calm strength, her steady heartbeat guiding two fragile souls. As a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you. The verse came alive in her black and white frame, her body a fortress of love. She cleaned, cradled, and fed. Her gentle growls a lullaby the world could hear through their glowing screens. Outside, visitors pressed close to glass walls, their breath fogging the panes as they whispered prayers for the unseen cubs. This was more than an animal rescue. It was a global emotional true story unfolding in real time. A viral YouTube story that stitched together hearts from Atlanta to Beijing, from classrooms in America to children's bedrooms in China. Humans are waiting. Prepare yourself for the wild to change your heart. Weeks stretched into months, each day a chapter of survival. The cubs remained hidden, protected, as zoo staff guarded their lives like precious treasure. Visitors would have to wait until late autumn to glimpse them. Patience demanded by ancient Chinese tradition. Pandas are not named until their 100th day, a ritual born of grief and wisdom. Because nearly half of all panda cubs do not live past infancy, names in this tradition are not given lightly. They are gifts of hope. At first, workers believed both twins to be male, but the truth of panda biology is elusive. Gender often cloaked beneath nature's veil. The zoo had already learned this lesson with Po, who was mistakenly identified, and even Mei Lan, another older sibling, had been misclassified. To be certain, the zoo turned to DNA, unraveling truth with strands of life itself. On December 13, 2013, a revelation shook Zoo Atlanta and echoed worldwide. Po, Mei Lun, and Mei Huan, the miracle twins, were all female. The announcement was met with cheers, laughter, and tears. For conservation, this was not small news. Female pandas meant hope, new mothers, future births, stronger bloodlines. Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. For a species clinging to survival, this verse was no longer just scripture. It was prophecy unfolding. And then came the naming. In a moment that transcended zoos and borders, Good Morning America invited the nation to vote. Millions clicked, typed, and debated, casting their hopes into digital ballots. Days of anticipation built like a rising tide until, live on national television, the names were revealed. Mei Lun and Mei Huan. The names, flowing with Chinese beauty, carried meaning far beyond syllables. In that instant, two tiny pandas were transformed. No longer were they fragile cubs hidden in a den. They became living symbols of unity. National treasures embraced by both America and China. Proof that humanity's love could stretch across oceans. The moment felt like a collective heartbeat. Millions watching, millions loving, millions promising silently to protect not just pandas, but all creation. This isn't just a story. It's a cry from the soul of nature. For these twins were not just daughters of Lun Lun. They were daughters of diplomacy. Pandas have long been called ambassadors of peace, their soft faces and gentle souls serving as bridges between nations. Every panda in America was on loan from China, their births part of an international covenant, their futures written in agreements signed decades before. When Mei Lun and Mei Huan reached maturity, they would, as tradition required, return to China. It was bittersweet knowledge, but in the meantime, they flourished, against all odds, against percentages that had condemned so many twins before. Both survived. They grew round and fluffy, their once pink, fragile skin now dressed in the iconic black and white that charmed the world. Visitors lined up in thousands to catch a glimpse. Children pressing faces against glass, squealing with joy. Parents whispering, "This is history." For the zoo, the story was no longer just about survival. It was about inspiration. The cubs became stars of countless heartwarming animal videos, viral YouTube stories replayed across phones and televisions, their clumsy tumbles and playful wrestling bringing laughter and tears in equal measure. The righteous care for the needs of their animals. It was not simply keepers who lived this truth. It was millions of viewers who donated, volunteered, and prayed for a species so precariously perched on the edge of extinction. When November 2016 arrived, the inevitable day came. Mei Lun and Mei Huan, now strong and independent, were prepared for their journey back to China. Their departure was tender. Their crates packed with 375 pounds of bamboo, gallons of water, sugarcane, bananas, and biscuits. Gifts of love for the long flight. Tears fell as Atlanta whispered goodbye, but joy burned stronger, because this was not farewell. It was continuation. They would return to Chengdu, where they, too, would one day raise cubs, continuing the chain of life their mother had started. And so the story found its crescendo, but not its end, because Lun Lun, the gentle mother whose calm gaze had steadied millions, was not finished with miracles. In 2016, only 3 years after Mei Lun and Mei Huan, she stunned the world once more with another set of twins, Ya Lun and Shi Lun. The pattern was undeniable now. Atlanta was not simply a zoo. It was a sanctuary where miracles bloomed, where love and science united to defy the odds. Over the years, all 7 cubs born under Lun Lun's care thrived. They traveled to China, became parents themselves, and carried forward a legacy that would echo across generations. In October 2024, after 25 years in Atlanta, Lun Lun, Yang Yang, and their daughters prepared to return home. Zoo Atlanta hosted a farewell, Panda Palooza, a festival of love where thousands gathered, children clutching panda toys, adults wiping tears, everyone united in gratitude. The pandas walked into their crates not as captives, but as royalty escorted home. The people of Atlanta wept, but they also smiled, for their city had been part of something eternal. Oh, for everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. Ecclesiastes 3:1. This season had ended, but its memory would never fade. The cameras, the news anchors, the viral videos, the countless hearts touched, all of it became one truth. The most beautiful miracles are often the ones we never expect. And so, if you are listening, if you are watching, let this story be your reminder. Life is fragile, nature is sacred, and when humanity chooses compassion, when it listens to the cry of the wild, miracles do not just happen, they multiply. This was not just an emotional true story of an animal rescue. This was the story of a species reborn, of a mother's love, of a human and animal connection so powerful it became a legacy. And as Lun Lun and her family returned to China, the world whispered one final promise. We will never stop fighting for you. When we look back at this story, it's easy to see it as just the tale of 2 tiny pandas who beat the odds. But if you look deeper, it is something far greater. It is a reminder of how fragile life is, and yet how incredibly strong it can be when given love, care, and a chance. From the moment Lun Lun held her newborns in her arms, to the nation cheering as names were chosen on live television, to the bittersweet farewell when they returned to China, every step of this journey became a piece of living history. These pandas were not just animals in a zoo. They were symbols of hope, of unity, and of the miracles that still exist in a world that can so often feel divided and broken. He has made everything beautiful in its time. The story of Mei Lun and Mei Huan was beautiful in its own time, but their legacy will echo forever. They showed us that even when the odds are stacked against life, even when nature says one twin must be left behind, miracles can break through. And when they do, the whole world stops, smiles, and believes again. And perhaps that's the greatest gift of all. Not just the survival of two panda cubs, but the survival of hope itself. Hope that if we care, if we protect, if we choose love over neglect, then miracles will keep happening. Not just for pandas, but for all creatures who share this earth with us. Because in the end, these pandas were never just Atlanta's pandas. They were never just China's pandas. They were the world's pandas. And their story will forever live as proof that sometimes the smallest cries can be the loudest calls to our hearts.